Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Pools Pod. We are recording this part one on the day after Remembrance Day. This is the 12th of November. So, if anything has happened in the time leading up to the publishing of the episode, we do apologise, but as we always say, we can't predict the future. Joining me for part one is the Reds' Danny Cooper. Hello, Danny, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. Yourself?
Not too bad. I mean, when you're in the form that Pools are in, you can't really complain. It's been a relatively decent period, I think it's fair to say, since the loss, the shameful loss, we shall call it, against Gainsborough at home. We haven't lost since then. We've dropped a couple of points to teams where we may have expected to beat. But all in all, I think it's been a positive interim period for Nicky Featherstone.
Yeah, it has. And I think when you look at it, it is incredibly fine margins. I mean, a dubious penalty against Morecambe and a 97th minute, 96th minute header from Edon Pruti. And then we could have been talking about 4 wins in a row, 12 points from 12, and would have had us sat in seventh.
And of course, if we'd been sat in seventh, we could have been looking up the league as opposed to down. But we are still in amongst the mix. It's fair to say we're not too far off the playoffs. I think the top six, if I remember rightly, that are a little bit ahead of the pack. I
Yeah,
think they're a few points ahead, maybe 6 or 7 points ahead. I don't have currently have the tables, and I will find them shortly. But you know, that little cluster, the top five, top six that have pulled away. After that, it is very tight in and amongst the rest of the teams, including ourselves. And of course, we beat a team that are now a place below us in Halifax on Saturday. You were there. It was, I think, it's difficult to say that it was a brilliant performance. I don't think anyone's going to say that particularly. But at the end of the day, we came out with the victory. We did. I think it was quite similar to the game that we had at Halifax at the end of last season, where we won 1-0, and it was quite a defensively solid performance. And a defensively solid performance is a very welcome return from the start of the season, I think it's fair to say.
yeah, it is. I mean, if you look towards the start of the season when we had a really good run, it was clean sheets. I mean, it took us until, was it Bank Holiday Monday when we conceded our first goal? Or was it Friday?
Southend, wasn't it, within 2 minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at that, and I think now we're starting to get defenders back because we had a massive period as well where we had a load of injuries, and I think Nathan Sharon was playing centre back, and through no fault of his own, he's not a centre back. But I think it's a one of those where it was a bit makeshift for a little while, but starting to get people back. I think George Evans on Saturday was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, the penalty save, the save late in the game. I just think now could be a little bit of another mini turning point because you look where we are in the league. I think we're what, ninth or something like
We
that.
are ninth, that's right.
That's off the back of 1 win in 13 in all comps.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a good run of form that saw Simon Grayson leave the club, rightly or wrongly. I'm sure people will have their own opinions on that. We mentioned that we beaten Halifax, so we're just below us in the table, and we will be playing the team just above us in the table in Wealdstone on Saturday. We'll come on to that one later on. But looking at the win at Halifax, it's nice to see a name on the team sheet who hasn't had too much to shout about since he arrived at Pools for his second spell with the club in Adam Campbell. Again, it's another one of those where he seemingly needed that little spark of confidence in his play because since Nicky Featherstone has come in as interim, he's been in an excellent run of form. He hasn't gone on the score sheet every time, but he's impacted the play, and I think it is fair to say he's probably been the best player in the squad since Nicky Featherstone took over.
Yeah, I mean, before the game against Morecambe, it was no goals in 12 months. So to come and get 2-2, confidence is building. And I think we're now starting to really see the player that we all thought we signed when, I mean, he was billed as a massive marquee signing when he came in from Crawley. Obviously, they just went up into League One. And I think if we can continue to build on his confidence and get him playing really, really well, it can only sort of turn out positive, you'd imagine, because you don't play in a side like that so regularly if you've got an out about you.
Absolutely. We've only scored 20 goals as a team this season in the National League, which is, as you can imagine, it's not exactly the best total in the league. It's the lowest in the top 15 clubs. Once you get below the top 15, it does tend to dip a little bit. But our defensive record, on the other hand, is still exceptional. There is no team in the league, with the exception of Rochdale, that have conceded less goals than
Yeah.
us on 14. Rochdale have conceded 12. There are a number of teams who have only conceded 14, including Pulse. But again, it just shows that there aren't too many goals involved in Hartlepool United games, and it's a credit to our defence at the one end, but unfortunately, it just hasn't proven to be the formula at the other. Do you think going back to Adam Campbell, maybe that he could be the partner? Because we've spoken about it before, that one up front has never really worked that well with Pulls. Do you reckon, for example, him and Alex Reid could perform something of a partnership?
I think so, but I think also he could sort of play more off Alex Reid, obviously in the two, but play off it, because I think he allows for a lot more creativity than a Danny Johnson or a Verdane Oliver would. Because I mean, Verdane Oliver was, I think, pretty decent when he stepped in for Alex Reid. Scored us a few goals, a few big goals at that. So I think the main thing for me is we need to see Alex Reid back in that sort of last season 21 goals form that he was in. So I think that'll be a big key of can we get him going, because he's another one where he came in and was built to be the man for us. So we've seen sparks of what he can do so far this season. Obviously, he picked up that injury against Gateshead. But I think if we are to continue to look up and make playoffs, I think he's going to have to be a big part of that.
Absolutely, and there is no better place for him to start than against the team whom he spent quite a lot of time on loan at last season in Wealdstone. We danced around it a little bit in terms of the game we have on Saturday. We'll touch on it now while we're on the subject. It's going to be a very difficult game. You suggest they've performed a lot better this season than I think a lot of people would have thought, given that they are currently eighth in the league. I'm not saying that everyone had them to go down, and to be fair, if anyone has listened to the previous ones and I've said that, then, fair enough, I've been caught out. But there won't be many who have suggested that they'll be in and around the playoffs come this point in the season. They've scored more goals than Pools. They've also conceded a lot more than Pools as well. So an indication perhaps that they're not exactly watertight.
Yeah, but it's also the same thing we said about Aldershot, isn't it? They scored a lot, conceded a lot, and
The most
that
inevitable 1-0 scoreline of all time, that one, wasn't it,
yeah,
really? Yeah.
oh definitely. But I think we just need that game where everything up front works, just as a massive confidence builder. Where we seen when we beat Woking at home comfortably at the start of the season, that was sort of a big moment, because even then it was not exactly flowing up front. It was decent, but I feel like that was the first time where we've seen everything click. And I think that's just all we're waiting for. We're getting goals. Well, we're getting a goal regularly in the last couple of games. But I think we just need that game where everything clicks.
Yeah, I think the game where everything does click, if it is this Saturday, it may well result in something of a hammering, and I think that we all would love to see that. I certainly would. I mean, given that I'm going to be speaking to Nicky Featherstone after the game, it would certainly be of a benefit to me if he's in a good mood, as opposed to the opposite scoreline. You mentioned Aldershot there, just for the record, they've scored 31 and conceded 39, so they're still, in fairly decent form when it comes to having goals in games. Only York have scored more than them with 43, which is a ridiculous amount of goals to score in 18 games, by the way. I know they put four past Rochdale, I believe, last night.
Oh,
So 4-1, yeah. So,
but
they're,
you've
they're
got
no
that
slouches in that department.
caliber of player up front, though. You sort of should be expecting that, shouldn't you? Ollie Pierce, Josh Stones, some really. I mean, Ollie Pierce, 15 goals already this season, 5 shy of our entire team.
Joe Gray?
Yeah, Joe Gray. I don't know who starts them. I don't know if Joe plays every week or what, but even having somebody like Joe Gray off the bench is, quite frankly, ridiculous.
Absolutely. I mean, just given the example of Tuesday's game, Ollie Pierce and Josh Stones both got 2 goals apiece in that game. Mark Kitchen with one of the assists as well, former Pulse
Yeah.
left back. He seems to be doing quite well now, and he didn't score for Rochdale, but he did assist. We all know who I'm talking about. I don't need to mention his name again. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a sign of what we could achieve because we're in the position where if we did get the recruitment right, we could very well be in the position. And you don't need a squad of about 257 like York have, because
Yeah.
it may well help or hinder, but it's not necessary in terms of being able to get up there into the playoffs. Just looking at that lineup, by the way, Joe Gray wasn't in the squad for whatever reason. I know he has started there previously, so
Yeah.
I don't think this will be a thing. He might just be a knock or an injury or something like that. But I'm not quite up on York as much as I might like to be. But to be fair, York have scored 4 goals in each of the last 3 games.
I mean, even Greg Ollie on the bench is
Greg Ollie is on
ridiculous.
the bench, absolutely. Yeah, I mean things like that. It's just the depth that you've got. It'll take you far in any competition.
Yeah.
But going back to the recruitment of pools, as I say, we've turned the corner slightly in terms of the way that we've been playing and the results that we're getting. It's not free flowing, but it is a return back to the defensive solidity we saw at the start of the season. And you've already mentioned him once, I think, in terms of the saves that he made, the penalty save that he made on Saturday. But if our recruitment across the board was as good as our goalkeeping recruitment, we'd be winning the league by now, wouldn't we?
I still don't think it's been that bad. I mean, you look at the players we brought in on paper, and I still don't think it's a bad window whatsoever for us. I mean, Max Coogan, really experienced in sort of the lower levels, National League. Obviously, he was National League North with Scunthorpe. You've already got Tom Parks in there, Cameron John, plenty of National League experience. Topolage, plenty of National League experience. Jay Ben was very good at Solihull Moors. Even then, Matty Daly, we've seen how good he can be in the Pizza Cup. So at this level, there was
Matty
always
Daly Cup.
yeah, there was always that Alex Reid signing a 21 goal striker from last season. You can't really complain. It just needs to click. It just all needs to work.
Absolutely. I think it's fair to say, looking back on it now, we did all say at the start, I know I did in the summer, that the recruitment looked very, very good at the time. I think the defensive recruitment still looks very, very good. I think a lot of what we've had in terms of our defensive issues recently can be put down a lot to injuries because our
Yeah.
main centre back pairings, our main centre back units have all been injured, rotated. I know Reece McNally's been out for how long's Reece been out for now? About 8 weeks,
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks. Certainly
Something.
feels like that. I think it wasn't at the game before Gateshead away, if I remember rightly. Was it Aldershot just before Aldershot that he was out? So probably mid-September we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be back. I think they're trying to say December. So when we're getting closer, he's back on the grass anyways, which is massive because
Yeah.
I feel like he's been a massive, massive loss, and he's sort of, I feel anyway, contributed to us having to move away from that five at the back that we were playing early in the season.
Yeah, I was going to say that as a back three, that back three of McNally on the right, Corgan through the middle, and John on the left-hand side of that back three was rock solid.
Yeah,
It says a lot that, of course, you need to rotate, and you can't really question Simon Grayson for that. But off the back of that win against Woking on the bank holiday and Tom Parks coming in, we conceded within 2 minutes, and that
I
was
think
the
it was a
first game
very
conceded.
unlucky goal. Can we just unlucky own
Hey,
goal?
it was a good finish.
It was a great finish, just in the wrong net.
You've got to
But
feel sorry for Cartwright. He'd had an unblemished record up to that point, and then our captain decides to volley one top bins.
I just don't think we have anybody who would have been able to come in as a like for like for Reece McNally in that situation, which is I think what hindered us the most. Of we were sort of forced into moving to a four, and I think a five as well gets the best out of the wing backs.
Well, that was going to be one of my future points. We'll move on to it now in terms of Jay Ben and Basat Topalage. They haven't really hit the heights that we saw of them at the start of the season. And whether that is because the move to a back four, I think that is a legitimate reason potentially why that could have happened. But they just don't seem to be at the level that they used to be. Particularly Jay Ben, because he's crossing at the start of the season and in pre-season as well. He just looked like a revelation at right wing back. And Topalage, you look at that cross that he provided against Woking for Francis's goal from pretty much the halfway line. We haven't really seen enough of that in recent weeks.
No, we haven't, and I think that can also be put down a lot to confidence as well. I mean, when you're going into games and you feel like nothing you're going to do is going to work. It can't be a nice feeling. So I think the more we win, and if we can put in a good performance as well as a win, because I mean, you look at the Solihull game and you look at the Halifax game. Both games were more gritty, grindy performances. Obviously, Vadianova had that ridiculous flick in the first half against Solihull. But, I mean, both games weren't exactly blowing the team out the water. I think if we can really start to put a performance in with the result, then we'll be able to start and see them get back to doing what we know they can do. That's the thing. We know they can do it because they have done it.
Absolutely. With regards to Verdane Oliver, he's very unfortunate that he suffered the injury when he did,
Yeah,
because he did start to get a couple of goals. He was having a good run of goal scoring form. As you say, that flick against Solihull was ridiculous. The
it
goal
was.
against Sutton was ridiculous because
That finish is just,
that was outrageous to have the wherewithal to do that. I mean, if he hasn't meant it, it's still a heck of a goal. He can only have meant that because he can't have like tried to lift it over the keeper and it ended up so far away from himself to go into
yeah.
the back of the net without him having meant that. So it's a brilliant finish. Reminds me a little bit of when Gary Medina had that sort of period last season where he was only scoring from like 40 yards or something. Like that goal against Gateshead. Like
Yeah, I was about to mention that one.
yeah,
Ridiculous goal.
like a veteran striker who only seems to score from like well outside the
Yeah.
box. Uh, but fair play, they count from wherever they go and the further out they go, fair enough, can't really complain. But as I said, it's a shame that he isn't in the side of the minute. It'd be interesting to see how him and Reed would link up potentially, because they haven't really been available together to have that sort of strong presence, in Oliver, the height that he brings, and then Reed being the goal scorer of the two, it could well have worked. But again, it just seems to be a running theme with the club in the last few seasons, certainly, where we just seem to get not only the amount of injuries, but also the quite sort of severe injuries. They're out for months at a time. You look at Jack Hunter last season, as we mentioned. Oh, sorry, I think we mentioned that before we came on air, actually, about Jack Hunter, but he had a 3 or 4 month layoff last season. We've got Reece McNally currently on the sidelines for the similar amount of time. We had Tyler Bury, who started brilliantly a few seasons ago, and he was on the shelf for 3, 4 months, and he had to go back to Millwall. It just
And
seems to be very
Mancini.
strange. Well, and yeah, but Mancini basically got injured every season. That's a bit of a harsh one to bring in. But yeah, you are right though. Like I say, there's always one player at least every season that seems to have an extended period out. Dan Dodds at the same time as Mancini having his ACL. There's a very strange thing hanging over the club and the squad.
It's just for me the timing of them as well. This, and you can't put that down to anything other than pure unlucky in terms of timing and severity of injuries. Because a lot of them are absolutely freak injuries as well. I mean, even back end of last season, I know he only played one game, but Jack Robinson, when we signed him, we brought him in. I thought he was, in that first game, he was really, really decent. And then all of a sudden, he's out for the rest of the season.
I still think that David Ferguson was carrying some form of like charm on him or something like that. Every time we signed a left back, like he had to keep his place. It was bizarre because every time we tried to bring in competition, like Bonswell, for example, I know he didn't get injured, but he very rarely played. It was just something of, even if we brought someone in who was capable of challenging, like Robinson may well have been, we don't know because he got injured pretty much straight away, and then Fergie basically kept his place because there was no one else again. Like I say, he had a very fortunate run, Fergie, towards the end. And to
And
be fair,
it
he
took
still
us
had
to
his
bring in
moments.
a winger and translate them into a left wing back to move him out of left back.
Hey, everyone tried at the back end of last season, but good luck to him at Gateshead for the future. Yeah, I think it's been a very strange opening to the season. It's also been very similar to last season's opening, where we were very strong defensively. We had a Rick around the beginning of September, end of August. We've sacked our manager. We've got an interim in who knows the club. You know, any thoughts about who may well be appointed next? Going around that merry-go-round.
I think it's a if Nicky Featherstone can keep getting the results and have us in sort of where we are now, I think it's what, a 3 point gap or something like that. It's not much at all. It's 3 or 4 points or something.
I don't think it's even 3 points. Oh no, it is 3 points. I apologise.
I
Fair
mean,
enough.
if
Southend do have a game in hand. It's fair. It must be said though.
yeah, if we can keep a 3 point gap, you'd imagine that it's still a very, very enticing job, because if we are there or thereabouts for playoffs, normally it's the same thing that can be said with obviously on a much bigger scale Middlesbrough. You don't come into a club with 9 times out of 10, if a manager leaves, you then don't come into the club
Mm.
still in a position where you can make something of the season. Like if a manager was to come in, have a new manager bounce, then you're all right. But I mean, if Nicky Featherstone keeps getting results, I don't think you can look past him either.
I don't think it's a coincidence that the results that we were getting under Simon Grayson, the back three were basically, you know, broken apart.
Yeah,
And that wasn't his choice to do that. They were injured. They were either injured or they were suspended. Or in the case of Cameron John, he couldn't play against York at the last minute for some reason. Oh no, it
no,
wasn't that. It was the cup game, wasn't it? That was a weird one because he can never play against York, but they refused permission last minute against Gainsborough, I think.
even against Gainsborough, Matty Daly had, I think Simon said, family issues in that interview
Yeah.
that he had to attend to, so he was unavailable last minute.
Yeah, so there have been a few sort of squad issues, whether it be injuries or unavailability and things like that, where he was sort of left with no choice but to play the squad that he did. And unfortunately for him, it just sort of resulted in, a lack of form. And at the end of the day, it resulted in him losing his job. Do you think personally, if McNally and Coogan hadn't gotten injured at the time that they did, do you think Grayson would still be at the club?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do as well.
I think the big thing for me is, and I'm going to go back to the Gateshead game, I think when I looked at the stats, in that game we had 27 shots and scored 1 goal.
I still can't believe we only won that 1-0.
And then there was the Aldershot game, which we had a load of one-on-ones, didn't put them away. There was a load of games where, if you look back on them now, and it sort of reminds me of the just after Christmas period of last year. We had them 3 or 4 home games on the bounce.
Yeah,
And we had chances to win all of them.
multiple times over.
And you're just thinking, right, if that goes in there and we win that game, which we should have done, there's a lot of results in there where you're thinking, how have we not won it? Boston at home, Tamworth at home. Brackley was, I think, the first real bad performance.
They seem to have something over us as well, by the way.
A lot of those games you're thinking, how on earth have we not come away with 3 points?
Yeah, I think it seems to be an ongoing issue over the last couple of seasons where our home form, we haven't taken the points against teams we should be taking points from. And it's those results really that have let us down. Because at the end of the day, no one's expecting us to go to the likes of Forest Green and Carlisle that we've had at the start of the season and beat them comfortably.
Yeah.
Like if we can nick a point, that is great. But those games become more important because we're not picking up the games at home that we should be winning.
Yeah. Like Halifax this weekend, drawing with Morecambe.
Yeah.
So much more emphasis on getting a win against Halifax.
That's exactly right. Because if you beat Halifax comfortably and then you go and get a point at Halifax, sorry, wait, have I done that the wrong way around? If you beat Morecambe and then go to Halifax and win, sorry, if you go to Halifax and get a draw, 4 points from 6.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's Halifax, a team that in and around us. Obviously, they were above us at the time that we went there, and we are now above them, having beat them. But if you take points from the teams around you and at the top of the league away from home, and you win your home games, you're going to be in a very good position.
Yeah. And I think if you look at it as well, since Nicky's come in, it's 2 home games, 2 away games, 2 wins, 2 draws. And it is the whole thing of win your home games, draw your away games. It hasn't quite panned out that way, but on paper, it's still exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Per game.
Absolutely. And as you say, if that's where you are come the end of the season, having won your home games and drawn your away, you're going to be in a very good position. You may not win the league, you may not finish in the top 3, but you're certainly going to be in and amongst it all, depending on how the other teams do. Upcoming fixtures, we've mentioned Wealdstone already, and if anyone doesn't know, it's kicking off at 3 minutes past 3 rather than 3 o'clock to support the 3 Up campaign. After that, we go to Eastleigh, which is a really lovely long trip for you.
Oh yes, can't wait.
How many
Can't.
trains does that one take you?
Too many.
Yeah, too many. Well, one's too many, I'd argue. But yeah, Eastleigh currently 13th. They're 4 points off Pools at the moment, haven't played the same amount of games, so they're very much, in that mid-table slot at the moment. So it'll be a tricky game, no doubt, but it's there for us if we want to go and do something there. Even a scrappy 1-0 win like a Halifax would do.
Yeah,
We're
of
just
course.
But like I say, if we beat Wealdstone today, sorry, on Saturday, that then means that we have the option of going to Eastleigh and saying the draw's a good result.
Yeah, it is that same thing again of if you win your home games, it allows a lot of those Carlisles, those Yorks, those Forest Greens to become more of a free hit.
Yes, absolutely. After that, we've then got Truro, which is obviously the return and vengeance of John Askey,
Yeah,
if he manages to do that. Have they won an away game this season yet? I think they've come close a couple of times, but I can't
yeah.
actually remember them sort of seeing one out. I think that they went 2-1 up at Gateshead or 2-0 up at Gateshead, didn't they? And they drew 2-2. So potentially, I don't think they have, they've got 12 points, but
Well, that
I
doesn't bode well, does it?
no, I think all of their points have come at home, personally. I'm just having a little flick through now to check. Yeah, it looks like all their points have come at home this season. So, they've lost every single game away from home. And if there was ever a time for Pools to intervene in that record, for John Askey to go back to his former club and get his first away points of the season, don't do it, please.
Thing is,
They're away at
you
Braintree this
can
Saturday for the record.
can you? You
Which
can
one?
see it a mile off.
Oh, absolutely. What, 91st minute winner or something?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely. Of course they can. It just wouldn't surprise us at this point, would it?
no.
That takes us to the end of November, and then of course we're into the December, the Christmas period. I was going to say, but it's December. We're home to Yeovil, away at Braintree on the 21st, which is a Sunday, which is again it's going to be lovely for you trying to get down there on a Sunday via the trains. And there is the gap in between those, of course, for the FA Trophy, which I'm assuming we're going to get knocked out by, I don't know, name a National League South club because that'll probably be what happens. We get at home to, I don't know, Western-super-Mare sounds like a team we get knocked out by. You know, I think we're due another humiliating result.
What do you mean, like a Hampton and Richmond?
Well, I was going to say Hampton and Richmond, but I knew we'd already been knocked out by Hampton and Richmond. I was trying to think of another one, but Western-super-Mare sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah.
Hartlepool nil, Western-super-Mare 1, something like that, yeah. Hey, honestly, please. Just give us. I wouldn't mind a cup run. Do you know what? I wouldn't even mind if we had like a season where we finished sort of ninth or tenth or something like that. If we were guaranteed to get to Wembley, I'd take it.
Oh, every day of the week. I think ninth this eighth or ninth this season, and a good FA Trophy run, and I would be over the moon.
But the thing is, when I say a good FA Trophy run, I want Wembley. I don't want us to get the semi-final and get beat. If we
Yeah.
were guaranteed a Wembley visit for the first time in our existence, and we had to sacrifice a playoff place like we finished ninth or tenth, I'd absolutely take that now.
Yeah. I think
Because
any
quite frankly, I know it's always a case of, if you're in the playoffs, you could win the playoffs. I don't think we'll win the playoffs if we go in the playoffs with the squad we've got. So therefore, I would sacrifice that place now, knowing that we get to Wembley.
I think we could, of course we could. But I mean, looking at it now, if we finished in seventh and the rest of the league stayed as it was, we would have one of what? We would have Rochdale first round in the eliminator, which instantly becomes a tough game straight away.
That instantly becomes a Manny Desiree 5 goal spree. Well, it does, doesn't it? We know for a fact what'll happen if we get Rochdale in the playoffs. It'll be the only game that Mancini's fit for all season,
Oh yeah,
and he'll assist all 3 goals. And then we've got Desiree, popping goal after goal after goal past us.
but no, I think a good FA Trophy run. I think we just need a cup run because we've not been great in cup competition since we've come down.
No, not at all. I think with the exception of, although no, we were in League Two that season. I was going to say the Palace run, but that was League Two, so
It's our only cup win, City of Liverpool.
potentially because we've been knocked out of the FA Cup in the qualifying round every year, haven't we, since we came back down?
Chester, Gainsborough, and Brackley.
Brackley, yeah, that's
Obviously,
three, yeah.
beat City of Liverpool. and then lost to.
We got knocked out by Hampton and Richmond that
Yeah,
year, and we got knocked out by Tamworth last year, first up.
yeah.
So yeah, you are right. Our cup record since we got relegated has been absolutely atrocious.
So I think the
And like I
next.
said, and the majority of those results have come against teams who were below us in like below our league,
Yeah,
like in National League North or below. Like it's not good. It's quite frankly, it's embarrassing
it's not great.
at all. So that does need to be improved. I mean, it depends on the draw because if we get drawn against, say, like York away or Rochdale away or something like
And
that,
you're like, all right, fair
you
enough.
can say that is a very
Oh,
difficult
game
draw, and that is fair enough if we like as long as we have a good goal, fair
finishes
enough.
2-1 or 1-0 or something, and we'll give it
Yeah.
a go. You're thinking, all right, it's
Or
fine.
even like say for example with the likes of York, the squad that they've got, if we were to go to York, they could put out their third string and it'd still probably be as good as, if not better than our first string.
But
That's the
that's what
reality of it.
people are saying, isn't it? York's second 11 is probably still good enough to be right up there.
Yeah, I'd argue that. It's just one of those where like if we have to compete with these teams, we need the quality in our first 11 because their depth is going to kill us in the end.
Yeah,
Coming off the bench on 60, say if it's 0-0 at 60, they'll just bring players off the bench who'll probably walk into our first 11.
need a
And
moment of magic.
that's the reality of the squad at the minute. Just finishing off that run in December after Braintree on the Sunday, we've got Scunthorpe at home on Good Friday. That'll be an interesting game, that, because they're another of the promoted sides. I thought Scunthorpe would be the best placed of the promoted sides. And to be fair, they are currently seventh, I think, aren't they?
Yeah,
So if Bournemouth hadn't have had a ridiculous season to this point, Scunthorpe probably would be right up there. So that'll be a very interesting game. And then, of course, we finish the year with Rochdale away on the Tuesday,
which will
which
be
yeah,
something.
which is listed here as a quarter to eight kickoff. I thought it was a 3 o'clock kickoff. That I don't know if that's
So,
changed anymore. I'm looking at BBC Sport here, by the way. This I've just got the run up here, but like I say, quarter to eight. We'll see if that changes at any point. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting end to the year. And the thing to say about that as well, with the exception of that last Rochdale game, it's all Saturdays.
yeah,
It's a run of Saturday games. There are no breaks in those either because we'll get a draw in the trophy that'll fill in that weekend. So that is very much, one after the other, a week after the other. You've got a week to prepare for each game. And I think that is important. I think that's really important for a club like Pools because I don't think, like, we've seen it as well where if we have a break, if we don't play on a Saturday, we're very sluggish in the next game. For example, you look at the game against Morecambe last week, where we didn't play on the Saturday, so we had a 10-day period
yeah.
between Solihull and Morecambe, and we looked the worse for it after the lightning start that we made. But we looked the worse for it, so I think potentially that could be a very good thing.
But I think that's something that happens with all clubs. I mean, you look. I think the record someone pointed out after the York Oldham game last year in the playoffs that the team in the eliminator who've played 2 games will have played a game in between the end of the season and the semi-final. Always actually 9 times out of 10 go into that game much better off than the team who've had a week or 2 weeks because I mean you're fresh, you're sharp.
Confidence that strikers in particular take from getting on the score sheet, it just carries you through. The momentum carries you through. Because if Armstrong hadn't have scored those 2 goals on that night when he first came in, it may well have taken him some time to bed in, and we wouldn't have had the form that we had from the rest of the squad either. Knowing that you have that goal scoring forward up front. So if for example Reid does score a couple on Saturday, if Campbell gets on the score sheet again on Saturday, if we have, I don't know what the state of Luke Charman is at the minute. I know
I
he's
think
going
he's
off.
game to game at the minute, so I
Yeah,
think he's back for Saturday. I think.
yeah. So potentially, if Luke Charman comes back in on Saturday and he gets a goal as well, it just permeates throughout the squad, the confidence going forward. Because as long as that unit is there at the back, because Quorgan and John are a decent two. I think with McNally in there as well, that three is ridiculously good. But as a two, they're a pretty good two. They've shown before that they're a very good partnership. It would just change the trajectory of the team to have that solidity at the back and knowing that you're able to take the chances at the front.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the confidence of Luke Armstrong getting the 2 goals when he came in and taking it back to the current squad. the person who I feel like is dying out for some confidence at the minute is Danny Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the situation where you just feel like when he gets one or two, he'll then get going a bit.
Do you
Because
know
you
what?
don't score
It's
them
getting to the
goals.
point. Yeah, it's getting to the point with him now that if we got a penalty and he was on the bench, I'd bring him on just to take the penalty.
I think he just needs to see the net ripple. And sometimes that happens in football, doesn't it? I mean, if it's not going for you, it's not ending up in the back of the net. I feel like he just needs just a couple of goals.
Yeah, I think if he gets one, he does feel like a confidence player where if he'll get one, he may well even go on in the same game and get another one or two.
Yeah.
But while he's in this rut, he just doesn't look as though he's able to keep up with the game. It's a very strange situation to be in. And when they had Rob Law in September, and he sort of made the declaration at the time that by the end of the season, or sort of in March, April time, we'll be talking about Danny Johnson on this big goal scoring run because there
Mm-hmm.
is a player in there. And Walsall in particular saw the player. Like
Yeah.
obviously he scored a hat trick against us for Walsall on the opening day in League Two. So it is there. We
You
just
don't
need to
score that
bring it
many
on.
goals in the Football League if you're not up to it.
Yeah, did he have a ratio like 1-2 for Walsall or something like that? One in
Yeah, he
three.
had the best minutes per goal off the bench, I believe it was,
Yeah.
in the entirety of the league last year.
Yeah, I think potentially there is a case to be made as well that we're not currently playing in the way that he needs to play. In
Yeah.
terms of we're not getting the ball in the 6 yard box or in the box for him. I don't think there's that many chances in the box for strikers at the minute that we've got.
But the one chance that comes to mind to me of
Forest
if
Green.
he was on the pitch, he'd have scored
Oh, okay.
was on against Halifax. That lovely one-touch play on the right-hand side, a ball straight across the box.
Hmm.
Danny Johnson's on the pitch. You can guarantee that he's going to be in the middle of that box.
But again, that's the sort of player that he is, and having signed him, we should know that, and we should be trying to play to that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we are at the minute. I think it goes back to what we've said about it being a front two rather than a front one. We need the front two because we need players who can play off each other, and I don't think we've done that enough this season. And I think he's proved that he can do it in pre-season. I know pre-season isn't the best barometer of anything, but obviously he was in the 6 yard box, and I think is the combined total of all 3 or 4 goals that he scored was 6 yards between them. Like he's so close to the goal line.
He's a proper poacher.
Proper poacher. If you get the ball in that box, low across the ground, because he's not going to win too many headers. He's not exactly the strongest in the air.
Not against
You-
your big 6'2", 6'3" National League defenders.
No, absolutely not. But if you whip the ball along the floor to him, as we've seen Jay Ben do in pre-season, as we saw Topolai, he's able to do it as well from the other side. Just get the ball in there, curve it round the defence. He'll get on the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
Yeah.
provide him with enough chances, he's going to take one of them just by volume.
And then you'll find that he'll take most of them.
Yeah. And it's not just that as well. If you're not putting the ball in there, as we've seen so many times in the past, he'll just stop making the runs.
Yeah.
Because if you're not putting the ball in there, what's the point in him trying to get in there? If we're just going to keep sort of, playing tippy-tappy around the midfield and playing it from side to side, etc., and not going in the box, at the end of the day, the striker's just going to go, well, you're not putting it in there. Why am I bothering to get in there? I'll just drop deep because that's the only way I'm going to get the ball. And then when they eventually do put it in there, he's not in there.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of one and a bit of the other, isn't it? Where he needs to be in there, but they also need to be putting the ball in there because if they don't do it,
There's
what
no point in him being in there.
exactly? So what? Like naturally, you're going to drop deep looking for the ball because you're not getting the ball. So we need to stop him from doing that by putting the ball in the box.
Especially during our run as well, where there was a load of games where I felt like we were under the cosh for large amounts, where the only chance of us getting out was when the attacker came short, which then leaves you short up front.
Yeah, but then that does also speak as well to the front two because if you have one that comes short, it's then good if you're going to flick it on to have that one running in behind. I think to that end, I think Adam Campbell's probably the best person to do that. Because I think if you've got Reed, for example, coming short, because he's proven Reed that he can be a handful to like flick balls on, etc. If you have him coming short and you have Campbell running in behind because he's got pace, Campbell. I don't know if you remember the game against South Shields pre-season,
Yeah.
last season, where he literally was played through, and the pace that he showed to get in, I think he was on the left, like coming in off the left, but he ran straight through, and no one was getting anywhere near him. So he's clearly got it in him, and we've got it in us to play those balls. You saw the likes of Jamie Marley play the ball in behind the defence, like through the defence against Altrincham. So we've got the capability. We just need to be able to play that ball a lot more to him.
Which
So I think,
comes back to what I said about everything clicking.
yeah, like if they're able to make those relationships with each other, to be able to find each other without even looking, because you know where they're going to be. So you've got Danny Johnson, who you know is going to be in the box. He wants to be in the box. He wants to be in the 6 yard box. You've got Adam Campbell, who you know prefers to be running through
Yeah.
because he's got the pace to do it. And you've got Reed, who you know can take a chance if he's in the right position, but also he's good at holding the ball up. And then, of course, you've got Oliver as well, who can put himself about. So there's four options there. I know Campbell's sort of the proto striker, if you like, but you've got four options there who could potentially play in any combination. As long as you're playing to their strengths, there is
There's
no
an
reason
attack,
why we can't score.
serious attack in there.
Oh, yeah, somewhere. We just
Can
need
you
it to click.
imagine Charman and Francis as well out wide?
Absolutely. But it's a very interesting conundrum to have because I think that playing with the wingers, I do like it when Pools play with wingers, but then there's that dilemma of if you play two up front and two out on the wing, you're leaving things short
In midfield.
elsewhere because I don't think we play well with two in the middle. That's the problem I think that we've got at the minute.
Basically, what we've deciphered is we need 13 players on the pitch,
Yes, at least.
which would really help.
Yeah, a back three, your two wing backs, three in the middle of the pitch, two wingers out on the wings, and then two up front.
Yeah.
However many that is. And York could still beat us. That's the horrible thing about that, isn't it? But yeah,
No,
fingers
York would
crossed.
probably get beat by Truro.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely get beat by Truro. Get beat by whichever Northern Premier League side or whatever it is we'll face in the FA. Oh, imagine if it's Gainsborough again.
I don't.
I don't know if they've gotten through to the most recent round or if we're able to play them again. But imagine if it's Gainsborough again.
Oh,
Do you know what? It'd be funny. Imagine if it's Gainsborough again and we turn them over. Like we've come on so much in 2 months that all of a sudden, like we're going to that game, having scored 20 goals in our last 5 games, and we turn them over like 6-0 or something.
it
And we
is
just think,
very young.
yeah, and we just think, where was that performance in October? Oh, it'd be peak pulls that. It'd be just as pulls for us to do that as it would be to like get beat by them again.
To answer your question, it's FA Trophy weekend this weekend for them clubs. And yes, they are still in it
Of course
against
they're in it.
Alfred Town.
Against who?
Alfred Town.
Alfreton. At home.
Yeah,
Should win that, shouldn't
you'd imagine so.
they? Yeah. It's going to happen again, lads and lasses. Get the Pulse v Gainsborough scarves back out again. Eh, Can we please just not play Gainsborough ever again? To be fair, I had Brackley in that category last season, but obviously they came up, so
We
we
couldn't.
have no choice with that one, unfortunately. But at least Gainsborough are 2 divisions below, so they can't be promoted to the National League next season, unless they have some dark arts going on there. But just to finish off, just that run that I've stated, just up to December or so, is the optimism there
Oh,
potentially
yeah.
for a positive return?
Well, I think all the way up until Scunthorpe, there is a world where we can win all five.
Yeah, there is, but that's a very
Very
optimistic world,
optimistic.
unfortunately.
But I feel like the more realistic way to word it is we can go unbeaten in all five.
Yeah.
I think if we go unbeaten, winning 3 and drawing 2 in that 5, I'll be very, very happy.
Yeah, I think we have to win all three home games. I
Yeah.
think Wealdstone at home, Truro at home, and Yeovil at home, we should be winning those games.
I feel like even Braintree away, we should be winning.
I do, but I think with the point that we've been making throughout this chat, if we win our home games and draw our away games, I think that's a good return. As you've just said as well, winning three and drawing two. I think Eastleigh away is a very tricky fixture for us personally because I don't think we've ever won at Eastleigh, have we?
It's a tricky fixture as well in terms of there's a lot of mileage covered.
Obviously, right on the south coast, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's
And I feel like it's the same. I don't know if Carlisle have played them yet or Gateshead. I feel like it's a tricky one for all. And even on the reverse fixtures, like a Truro coming up here, Eastleigh coming up here, it's always a
Well, funnily enough, Carlisle play Eastleigh at Carlisle this coming Saturday.
right.
So it's not down to Eastleigh, but it's not far off. York played Eastleigh at Eastleigh Saturday just gone. So not quite as far as us, but it's not
Still
far off.
a fair track.
So yeah, as you say, it can be difficult in terms of that as well. But I just also think, we do have a very poor record against them in general. So I think
Yeah.
if we get something there, that's a good point. And if we get all three, it's an absolute bonus. Because I think, as you say, long journeys like that. Gateshead went there, by the way, in the first Eastleigh's first home game of the season. So it was the second game week of the season, and Gateshead won 2-0.
Right.
So it can be done from the north.
No, it definitely can be done. So I think for me, if we come out with that with 11 or more points, I'll be very, very happy.
I think at a push, I think 10 points out of 15.
Yep,
If we,
double
if we
digits.
lose to one of those, if we lose to Eastleigh, for example, win all three of our own games and get a draw at Braintree, I think that's a decent return.
Yeah.
A very decent return because it keeps us in and around the playoff places, and it's very much dependent at that point as to which appointment we make.
Yeah.
Because it'll be interesting to see if Featherstone does get it, how long he lasts.
I mean,
I didn't say that.
if we continue the form we're on, 2 wins, 2 draws, and we go into that and get 10 or 11 points, if he's not being given the job permanently, I'll be shocked. Because in an interim like that, the only reason I could see him not being in charge permanently is if that's a conscious decision by him that he didn't want to take it yet.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to learn. I mean, obviously, it's his own opinions and such, and we're not really entitled to know that unless he wants us to. But it'd be very interesting to me if he's made the decision already as to whether he's just taken this as sort of, stepping into the breach while someone else is found, or if he's genuinely interested in the job.
Well, it reminds me of when Anthony Sweeney was here. Reminds me a lot about that. I feel
Yeah,
like Nicky could be another one where he's a long-term assistant stepping in.
absolutely.
But if he wanted to take the job, and just how fitting would it be if him of all people was the one to either take us back up or get us in the playoffs? I
Well, you
think
know
it,
what? Gateshead have had that for a couple of seasons. Obviously, it's went a little bit pear-shaped recently, but they had Mike Williamson and then Rob Elliott, and the promoted Carl Magnay as well. I know it didn't go particularly well for Carl Magnay, but they promoted from within the club to step up to be manager, and up until Carl Magnay, it worked pretty much perfectly, and obviously they were in and around the playoffs. So it
yeah,
can work. You've just got to make the right appointment for it to work. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, if it does work and it is him, obviously he'll get the full support of the fans. You would certainly hope, and I have no doubt that they would. It just feels like one of those appointments where he hasn't really gone out to get someone suited. The
yeah.
argument to that is, who else is there out there? Because we've tried everyone else.
It's also a case of a lot of people at the minute would be waiting for the Football League jobs, because this time of year you see a lot of managers
Absolutely.
get sacked because we're getting towards the halfway mark of the season. If a team who's in the playoffs are mid-table, team who want to be in the playoffs are sat 11th, 12th, they might then sack manager and try and go on and see if a change works that way. So I think I like the idea of Nicky Featherstone. A lot of people will look at it and sort of turn their nose up at he's never managed this, that, the other. But all managers have to have a first job somewhere. And at the end of the day, he's a
Absolutely.
very smart footballer and a very smart footballing man. So
Absolutely. And if he does well for Pools, then that can only benefit us all and for his future managerial career as well, if he inclines to go that way. Thank you very much, Danny, for joining me tonight. We do have a part two with Robbie Stelling coming up as well. We also have a chat with Leo, the Wealdstone fan, who's given us his thoughts on the game on Saturday. But do stay tuned. Thank you very much, Danny, for your contribution.
thank you for having me.
And I'm joined in the intermission by Leo, who is a Wealdstone supporter. It's something new for the podcast, getting on the opposition side, as it were. Leo, how are you, mate?
Not too bad, thanks, Jack. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad myself. This is the final bit of the episode that we're recording. This is on Thursday night. Obviously, previously we've had Danny on Wednesday and Robbie earlier on today. So if anything happens on Friday, as we've always said, feel free to let us know, but we can't read the future. And that goes for both Pulls and Wealdstone, because we've got two opposing viewpoints on for this segment. So, Leo, with regards to Wealdstone, obviously, I'd like to think I know quite a bit about Pulls, but from the Wealdstone side of things, you are currently eighth in the table, just one place above Pulls, in fairly good form as well, I understand. And obviously, given that you're this high in the table at this point in the season, did you expect to be where you are at this point?
Short answer is no. I'll keep it brief on that point. For Wealdstone this season, we on our supporters podcast, we said, well, Wealdstone, given we had a budget cut at the end of last season into this season, Sam Cox, who came in as manager, he had a pretty unfortunate spell as manager of Oxford City for the start of last season. So again, jury was very much out. He did have a very good back end of the 23-24 season where he came in on an interim basis, and he did keep us up. I think he got 10 or 11 points from the last 5 games of that season. So I think because of the budget cuts and everything that was going on, there was a lot of instability at the football club, I think, in the off season. We are supporter owned, so you never think there would be that much instability. However, a few things were going on behind the scenes, and me and two other fans, we did a podcast before the season. We all tipped Wealdstone to get relegated. So relative to where they are now, absolutely we are overachieving. And you've got to say, Sam Cox has done a fantastic job. What I would say about Wealdstone, and I don't want to go on for too long, is that because of the way that we recruit, we can't recruit players until very much like just before the season starts. You have to try and get players in on an absolute bargain, and we've done a really, really good job of getting guys in that probably were wanting maybe double the money that they're on with us at the moment, but being able to get them in. And the style of football, Sam Cox got a very decisive style of football. He's very impressionable, and like I say, everyone has been pleasantly surprised with how the season's gone so far, and long may it continue.
Well, hopefully not this Saturday, but we'll come on to that shortly. Wealdstone, if you look at the record of the club, scored 27 and conceded 24, which compared to our lot, we score less but concede less as well. We're very good at the defensive end of the pitch, not so much the attacking side. And, the record, you've won 8, drawn 4, lost 6, but you have won 4 in a row in the league. So, as I said before, the form is there. And is there anything in particular that you think's contributed to the form recently? Is there a particular player perhaps that might have stepped up, or is it the tactics maybe?
I don't think it's been tactical. I was quite derogatory again on our Wealdstone podcast of a player, Zach Hassan, who we signed from #United in the summer. He jumped up 2 leagues, and I thought he's nowhere near good enough for the standards. Still think he's too lightweight to be able to really be consistently dominating games. However, I've got to say he played really well in the 4th qualifying round against Whitstable, and since then against Sutton he was fantastic. He had a really good showing against Southend in the FA Cup, and he was fantastic at Yeovil for all intents and purposes last Tuesday as well. So he's been very pivotal, I think, in some of the attack and play. He's one of what maybe 2 or 3 players we've got that would like to take a player on. Actually, have a go. Good news for Bulls fans is that he's actually away on international duty this weekend. He's away with Somalia, so he's not around. But like I say, he's been useful. And I guess going back to Sam Cox earlier, he's had guys that have been on the periphery of the squad the last couple of years, and he's actually brought them in and he's trusted them to actually be able to step up, to be able to play, pre-playing week in, week out. Guys like Dom Hutchinson, who's the other wing back who will be playing on Saturday. I've always liked him as a player, but I think he's really come on leaps and bounds again this season, and he might be able to potentially give Paul's left back a bit of a tough time. We shall see.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you extend that form a little bit further back, since the 20th of September, when you were beaten by Morecambe in a 4-3 thriller, as it were, you've only lost to York in the league, which, anyone can get beaten by York, given they've got about 250 players in their squad at the moment. But, as I say, it speaks to the way that you're very difficult to beat as well. You may have conceded a certain amount of goals, but clearly there is something of a resilience about the side, and that you are able to keep teams out and nick points where maybe you wouldn't have expected to.
Possibly. And you'd think the way that is, you'd think maybe the side is a bit more structurally sound defensively. But any Wealdstone fan that was a York will tell you, we pressed them for the first half of the entire game. Ridiculous setup. I think we had all 11 players, all 10 outfield players in their half at one point, just trying to stifle them completely. So depending on who the opposition is, the team and the management team, they will change up tactical setups to account for that. Again, I guess another thing that works in Paul's favour this weekend is Dion Woodman, who, again, one of those guys that was kind of a bit of on the outcast and has came in towards the end of last season, and he's been starting pretty much every game this season. I think a lot of Wealdstone fans would say he's been player of the season so far at centre back. So we play a back three. But after the Braintree game on Saturday, massive scuffle on the pitch at full time. Pretty much every set of players, officials got involved, and of course he was the one player from Wealdstone's side that got himself sent off. So he's now got a 3-match ban. Of course that kicks in, starts on Saturday, and yeah, I guess that's where the concern is from a Stones perspective coming into this weekend is a lack of real depth. We've got some injuries again, players on international duty, suspensions. So we probably will have a full 7-man bench, but it'll be guys that barely have played all season, so won't be able to make any real impact on the pitch if things are going wrong off the back of that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that game actually because I've just seen the fact that there were 3 red cards at the end of that game, one of them being Woodman, as you suggested, and the other 2 being on the Braintree side of things, so you're not affected there. The goal scorer worth noting as well in Dannon Crummer, who was on trial at Pools in the summer, and I'll be perfectly honest, I thought he was pretty good when he was with us. I think whilst he didn't sort of set the world alight as such, I thought he would be a handy option for Pools. I think the problem they had, I think he picked up an injury at one point, and that sort of ended his stay, if you like, because he was injured and the club moved on to other targets. Has he impressed at Wealdstone since leaving Pools?
He's not really had an opportunity. He came on the first month or so of the season. Again, bit of pace, bit raw, but there was things there to like about him. And then I guess the reason why no Wealdstone fans ever going to forget his name is not sure if you're aware, but we had a game in Scunthorpe, the Scunthorpe game in September, where he was through on goal, extra touch, got taken out by the keeper. Stones fans saying it was a penalty, never was. But in doing so, he broke his collarbone. Yep. And again, like the game should have carried on. I was there at the time. I thought it was ridiculous that the game got abandoned and we didn't come out onto the pitch. And Scunthorpe fans, I don't like to say it, they were within their rights to have a moan about it. But he's been out pretty much since then. So Saturday was the first time we've seen him since the Scunthorpe game. And he came on. He's rangy. He's willing. He's willing to get involved, to try and press from the front. And that's probably instructions from the management team. But for like a full gauge, of course, we've only seen maybe 2-3 times this season, so it is really hard to say yes, there's a player there, there's not. But yeah, like I say, what we saw on Saturday, I did like when he came on. I think any striker would have scored that goal if you've seen Braintree's keeper, because it's an absolute shocker from his point of view. But yeah, I say fingers crossed. I don't know, maybe he just goes on a bit of a purple patch. It does happen.
Absolutely. There are a couple of other names that may be familiar to Paul's fans as well. Olafella Olamola was here for a little while. He didn't really set the world alight while he was here. And Terrell Ajmang was on loan from Middlesbrough. I think it was last season. It may have been the season before. It was definitely since we've been relegated to the National League. I think Terrell Ajmang had spells where he looked okay, but he was played out of position quite a lot. I think he was played as a right wing back quite a lot, and it wasn't really his position. He was better off driving in from the centre of midfield. And after a good start, he sort of faded away once he was playing out of position. So, with regards to those two, is there anything there to be looking out for on Saturday if they do start?
I think Ajmang probably will start. He started the last couple of games, and he has been playing in the centre of midfield. I know Morecambe fans were absolutely scathing of him. He was playing at a right back, so if he's playing as a wing back, right back, obviously doesn't suit him at all. But centre mid, I thought he was off it on Saturday. I'll be honest, I thought Braintree's midfield had more of it, and I don't know who's going to be playing for Pools, if it's Miley or is it Mark Sherrin? Got it right?
Nathan Sherrin, usually.
Nathan Sherrin, sorry, apologies.
That's all right.
But yeah, obviously, guys there where you think, well, probably impose a bit more. I'm not sure he's going to have as much of an impact, but he'll be there. As for Olafella Olamola, he's actually not been involved last 2-3 games. No one's really sure why. He's not been suspended. We don't think he's injured either, because he's been involved with the playing squad. So maybe he comes in on Saturday. If that happens, it'll probably be a tweak of shape because he tends to play behind whoever the striker is. And at the moment, Nathan Shakuna's kind of got that spot sealed at the moment. So it may be a case of maybe he comes off the bench. I don't know. We shall see. But with Fella, I say one of those guys, he endears himself, but he doesn't score. And he's kind of like a striker, attacking midfielder. He needs to be doing more of that to get himself definitely starting in the first team.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's midfield has been something of a bone of contention over the last few games. Well, over the last couple of months, I would say, really. As I've said before, our defence is pretty much rock solid when we have our personnel fit, especially the centre of defence, because for some reason our goalkeeper has been exceptional, in terms of our scouting. We had Harvey Cartwright at the start of the season, who was a revelation. If he'd stayed all season, I'd have very much tipped us for playoffs outright because he was that good at the start of the season. He was ridiculous. But he got injured. We've brought in George Evans as a replacement from Millwall. He looks excellent as well,
Mhm.
to be fair. I don't think, I mean, Cartwright is a ridiculous level, but Evans looks a very good fit for this level. He played a couple of championship games last season, I do believe, for Millwall. So he's like the goalkeeping and the defensive department, were pretty much there. A couple of injuries at centre back, could be better. But then the midfield, to go back to that, as to who Adjumang may come up against, Sharon is pretty much nailed on as long as he's fit, and he doesn't really get injured that often. Nathan Sharon, the usual reason for an absence is he builds up yellow cards quite a lot. If you look at any of our score lines, you'll probably see Sharon yellow card on there because he does love a tough tackle. So I would imagine that he probably will be in there. The place next to him is the one up for debate, realistically, because Jamie Miley is a good player, he's a tidy player. I don't think he's been allowed to go forward as much potentially as he could do. If he does manage to get the license for that, he could have a better impact on the game because he's got a good eye for a pass as well. And then a little bit further forward, it depends on the makeup of the side because Jermaine Francis, we've got the same issue as yourselves in terms of the player out on international duty because he goes off to Granada, I believe. So he'll be unavailable for Saturday. And he's been very good this season without really getting the goals to reward him for his hard work. Luke Charman on the other side has been very much improved at the start of this season, but he's currently carrying a knock and he's basically going from game to game. And then up front, we've had a bit of rotation in terms of the fact that Alex Reid got injured quite early on. He was in good form at the start of the season, but he's had to come out the side. Danny Johnson hasn't scored yet, which is a surprise to us all, really, because he had a good record coming in. And then you've got Verdane Oliver, who we've not long signed on a free, and he started pretty well as well. He got a few goals and some spectacular goals as well. If you see his goal against Sutton or his goal against Solihull at the end of October, they are ridiculous goals for any striker to score. But again, he's picked up an injury. Adam Campbell's an interesting one. He scored two in his last two, and his form since he came in at the start of last season has been horrific. We just think he's lost confidence completely. But since Nicky Featherstone took over interim charge, he's been a lot better. So, and he's got those two goals, which may hopefully set him off on a bit of a run. I think I said you won four in a row in the league earlier on. I think that is wrong because I think one of those was the
It's
FA
free.
Cup
It's free in
against.
the cup. Yeah.
Yeah, it's three plus the one in the cup, so I
Yeah.
apologise for that. But the other thing to say as well is that the scorers in all of those games, all four of those games, it was all different scorers.
Yeah, and I think the first 11, I think the first 11 scorers we had in the league this season were all different scorers as
Yeah,
well.
so it's very good. I mean, it's clearly very good to say that you can get goals from all angles.
Absolutely, and I think you'll find. I mean, Paul's fans that are very versed in the National League will probably know Jack Cook. Centre back. He's been with us for what 4 or 5 years now. Was he 6'4"? Always looks really lanky, but to me, possibly the best Wealdstone player I've ever seen in my lifetime. I've been supporting the club for nearly 30 years. Um, like just that outrageously good. Admittedly, he did have a shocker against Paul's at Victoria Park last year because he let the equaliser in, and I don't know how on earth he let the ball bounce for Disquery to score. That's a conversation maybe for Saturday with some Paul supporters, but yeah, he's been fantastic. If Woodman was around again, he's 6'5", so we've always got height, and that's where you think that comes in useful from set pieces, whether it's corners, free kicks, etc. We got wingers that can score. We got midfielders that can score. You said about the keeper you got, George Evans from Millwall.
Yes.
Um, we had a lad from Millwall, Alfie Massey, for the first 2 3 months of the season. And I don't know if Millwall are just loaning out these kids that are way too good for the National League, but he was ridiculous in the midfields. I mean, absolutely was just dictating games.
Do you know what Danny did mention when I was recording with him yesterday? And people will probably hear this before listening to this section. But the club may well have been in a situation where, and this is Millwall I'm talking about, like EFL clubs may have been in a situation where they were looking to loan them out to EFL clubs, but because the transfer window is shut, they may have had to think, well, it's either we loan them out to National League or below, or they're
Hmm.
not going to get played. Certainly, those in and around the first team who they don't really want to drop to the reserves, either you loan them to a National League club to get game time, or they're not going to play. And I think, to be fair, National League clubs will do well to look at that sort of market. I mean, again, you've got the likes of York who have 250 players that don't need any loan signings, and the likes of Rochdale have a very strong squad. For example, Forest Green. But there will be others in sort of mid-table and such, the likes of us and, the likes of, trying to think of one off the top of my head. Maybe it's Brackley, for example. That sort of club that are expecting to stay up, but they want to be comfortable. If you're looking at players that may be hanging around Championship League One clubs that you may think are too good for you, but if they're wanting to play, they may well put a word in with the club to say, well, actually, I'd rather just play for, even if it's just for a month until January, to be able to get these talents in. And you never know, it'll help the player as well, because if they're playing well at this level, they're going to go on to better things. The example best used for our lot is Reyes Cleary from last season at the second half. He didn't earn a new contract, and he managed to get a contract off the back of it with Barnsley because of how well he played with us.
Mhm.
You can only think that that must have been part of the reason Barnsley saw something in him, because he was ridiculous last season. He was unbelievable. If we didn't have him, I think, did he score it at Wealdstone?
No, that
Was that
was
Eastleigh?
yeah, it would probably be easy. I think that's where we got the goal at our place as well. Actually, that was
I was
it
going to
was
say,
one all
definitely
draw.
scored that 98th minute one at our place,
Yeah,
unfortunately for yours. But yeah, I can't remember. Was it 1-1? It
it
was
was one
definitely
all.
1-1 at
Yeah,
home.
both
Was it
both games were
1-1?
1 all. Both
Yeah.
games were. Yeah. We scored later on at the Vale, and it was I don't know what happens, but second half switch pulls just well off the boil. We were all over yous, and then
Yeah.
finally, Adam Smith was a keeper, and I still think made one of the best saves I think I've ever seen.
Oh, well, it's good that he did something last
He did
season.
something, yeah. I
You know
know.
what? I think he does have his moments, Adam Smith. But however, I've always said, because he's our goalkeeping coach, your goalkeeping coach should never be your number one. Never.
Yeah, true.
Because at the end of the day, if you've got anyone else sort of learning from him, if he makes mistakes, they're only going to look at him and go, well, how are you playing over me? I know you're the coach, but, like, surely I deserve to start. I've just checked, and it appears that Gary Medine scored for us
Gary
that day.
Medine, that was it. Yes.
Fergie with the cross, and Medine just sort of stabbed it in. But yeah, I can't pronounce that. Boldvine?
NGO Bouldervine. That's how
Boldavine.
you say it. Yeah.
That's him. He used to be at Notts County, I believe.
He's still with us. He's vice captain this season.
Oh, no, I'm saying I thought he used to be at Notts County
He is, yeah. So he's
before
not
before he came to Wealdstone. Yeah,
Sutton. Yeah, we signed him from Eastleigh. So he went to Eastleigh from Notts. No, he went to Sutton, then to Eastleigh, then to us. That's it.
that's the one. But yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting game on Saturday just to round everything off. Are you confident of getting, if not a point, then maybe it's all three, given the form that you're currently in, and given the fact that I think I don't think you have a necessarily bad record against Pulse off the top of my head, because obviously you didn't lose to us last season. And I think we
Oh,
do
we
seem
do.
to have an issue with teams that we should, like, that realistically with the squad that we've got, we should be
Yep.
taking points off. We do seem to drop our game quite a lot. That result last January away from home, that was in a run of games where we were looking at thinking we should be taking a
Yeah.
lot of points from that period, and we just didn't turn up. So yeah, do you feel confident about getting? And I promise I won't cut this out. I'll try and edit
That's
it
fine.
out.
I think if we didn't have those two players in international duty, I'd have been more confident. Omar Musa is the other guy. He's been called by Burundi. So I love all these countries that take these players in. But Musa's the one kind of playmaker we have in the midfield. I think without him, we really lack him. There's a guy we got from Ipswich, Stephen Turner, who I think Yeovil apparently came on, was brilliant first 5-10 minutes, set up the second goal. And then I saw him live for the first time on Saturday, and he just had no impact at all on the game. So I've got no confidence he's got the ability to control it. Stone's record against Pools, I'm hoping I'm going to do a reverse jinx here. Is we've never beaten Pools at all. Like I say, it's been this is the fifth season I think where both sides have played each other, and it's normally there's quite a few draws in there. But I know that the COVID season where you went up by the playoffs, we lost I think January 3-1, and then we got pumped. I think it was 7-1,
7-2.
7-2, 7-2. That was it.
7-2. That was around April, May time, I believe. If I
That's
remember
what
rightly.
everyone was on furlough our side, and we basically just didn't have a squad. It was just a running joke watching the games at home. But yeah, and then even seasons afterwards, never won. I mean, the two games at the Vale last couple of seasons, one all season before. Last season, I think we should have won that game in the second half. Season
Yeah.
before, we were 3-0 up, and that game finished 4-all. That was
Honestly, we do have some entertaining games, don't we, when you
yeah,
think
I
about it?
can't remember who the player was. Obviously, you might be able to look it up afterwards. But the Pools player that scored the goal to make it 4-all, absolutely fantastic strike. You've doffed
Oh,
the
I
cap.
do. I have a vague memory of that. I wasn't there, but I listened to it
Yeah.
on Radio Tees, and it was the reason why I remember it sort of out of offhand. I know, was it the weekend before Christmas?
It was. I think
Like it was like 3 days
yeah, it
before or
was. Yeah,
something.
it was. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
I
Yeah.
remember it because I remember that it was Joe Ramage who used to work for the Hartlepool Mail. He was the Pools correspondent. It was his last game for the club. Sorry, it was his
Okay.
last game for the Mail covering the club. And obviously, he always said like afterwards when if and when I've seen him since, like my last game was a 4-4. Like it was because he was doing core comms. The Hartlepool Mail correspondent tends to do core comms for Pools games with Radio T's away from home. And like I say, he was incredulous by the end of it as the fact that he knew he was leaving. He was like look at this game. Like
Yeah.
look
What
at
game
what's
to end
happened.
on?
But I do have that vague memory of that really like ridiculous goal. And I genuinely can't remember who scored it. I'm sure I'll
Whoever it
type
was,
it, have a
left
look
foot,
while I'm
probably
here.
about 30, 35 yards out. Anyway, on for
Yeah.
Saturday. I'll take a point now, just because again, suspensions, injuries, etc. Um, Otherwise, I'd have been more confident. I think just because again, you hear about all the dysfunction that Hartlepool off the pitch. And unfortunately, you never like to hear it from a supporter's point of view, but often it does seep onto what happens on the pitch. But then when you said, just then Pools of what was it, 2 wins and 2 draws in the last 4 games.
Yes.
Away from home, it's a long journey. I'm not sure what the club's arrangements are, because most clubs that are professional will travel the day before, won't they, and stay overnight somewhere locally. I'm not sure if we're doing that tomorrow, if we're travelling up, or if we're travelling up Saturday morning. If it's the latter, then definitely reduce the chances even further. Yeah, it's all kind of up in the air. I'll take a point now.
Do you know what? I've just quickly looked it up, and Mitch Hancock scored the goal to rescue the point. And I am not going to lie, I completely forgot about his existence. I would never have named him as a Pools footballer in a million years. Apparently, he was on loan from York for 7 games. Or he only played 7 games for us. He's at Spennymoor now. I genuinely forgot he played for us. But it was 4-2 in that game before we scored 2 late goals by the looks of things. And, I mean, I'll take a 4-3 tomorrow. Obviously not, not sorry, on Saturday. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Not from one particular point of view, but, if it would be nice to have a Pools game with some goals in for a change. And not like a comfortable 3-1 when we got beat by Carlisle in October, but like just a nice ding-dong thriller, because it makes such a change from what we've been watching recently, where it's all 1-0s or 2-0s or 1-1s. Just have two teams going for it. It'd be very
We'll
nice.
we'll give it a go. I think that's one thing I would say about Sam Cox and his coaching staff is they don't tend to rest on the laurels. They'll give it a fair crack at the whip, and if they think there's an opportunity to exploit and get some goals in, they'll do it. Like I say, we tried it at York, it totally backfired on us. We might try it on Saturday, it may backfire on us again. We shall see.
Well, absolutely. And as you mentioned there as well, Pools have never lost to Wealdstone. That is a Yep, that's true. They've never lost to Wealdstone. I was about to say there. Oh, maybe they have, but no, they haven't. Yeah, to be fair, the last three have been draws. The three before that were all wins for Pools, but the last three have been draws. So if it's going to trend in that direction from Pools win to
Five wins.
draw, we've had three
Yeah.
wins and three draws. You never know; it might well be time for something that we, as Pools fans, do not want to see. However, it should be a very good game. We'll have to see how it goes. Thank you very much for chatting to me tonight, Leo. And I'd say good luck for Saturday, but that would be like I think we'll all appreciate a bit of honesty there. But are you travelling up?
Travelling up, yeah. Hopefully the flooding and the storm tomorrow is not going to cause the rail lines to be totally knackered. But yeah, travelling up early Saturday morning. I think you get into Pools at 10:30, 11 o'clock. So get a sample of the lights of the town and the marina. Did it last year, do it again. I actually really enjoy Pools, where it's one of the funnier away days of the season. So yeah, looking forward to it.
To be fair, a lot of people enjoy coming up here just partly because Newcastle's only 40 minutes up on the train. 40,
Yeah,
45
we
minutes.
we do that for Gateshead. Gateshead,
Yeah.
that's what that's for. Yeah, I say keep it local.
Well, absolutely. Well, thank you very much there, Leo, and fingers crossed all goes well for you travelling wise and not match wise on Saturday. But thank you very
Yeah, no
much there.
worries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leo, for that. And I'm joined now by Robbie Stelling from the Hartlepool Mail. Hello, Robbie. How are you?
I'm well, Jack. Thanks for having me on again. I think, like a lot of Pools fans, feeling much better after the last few weeks. It's certainly been a turbulent season on and off the pitch for all sorts of reasons, and things were beginning to look pretty bleak, weren't they? But some positive signs certainly under Nicky Featherstone. Work to do, of course, but 8 points from the last 12 available in the National League represents a really promising return, and it feels like there's been a lot of doom and gloom hanging over Victoria Park for good reason a lot of the time, but remarkably, Pools are still only 3 points outside the playoff places. So there certainly is hope that this season is still salvageable.
Absolutely. You mentioned there 2 wins and 2 draws since Nicky Featherstone has come into the club. We'll ignore Gainsborough, I think, for our own mental health and mental sanity, for want of a better phrase. However, 2 wins and 2 draws in the league. There's no losses in there, so it's a pretty good run of form. We've had 2 home games and 2 away games in that time. It's not panned out that we've won both home and drawn both away, but as I spoke with Danny yesterday night, it is a good thing to be aware of, to win your home games and then draw your away games, and you'll be in a good position come the end of the season if that's the case.
Yeah, without a doubt, Jack. I mean, I think in Nicky Featherstone's defence for Gainsborough, and I promise not to dwell on that, he only had a couple of days, really, didn't he? Probably only one training session to try and implement any sort of ideas. I mean, I thought it was a strange decision to sack Simon Grayson at all, to be honest. I know that a run of one win in 11 games was really disappointing, and Pools had lost a lot of momentum. But the timing of it, and maybe we'll discuss, the next manager, whoever that might be, in a bit. But the timing of it was really bizarre to me, to make that decision in between the initial FA Cup tie and the subsequent FA Cup replay. That suggested to me that it was a really impulsive decision, a knee-jerk reaction. And the fact that we're more than a month on and there's still no permanent replacement suggests to me that either Pools didn't have a plan in place for life after Simon Grayson, or that they've been rebuffed by some or all of their leading candidates. But in Nicky Featherstone, I imagine they have someone who is probably one of, if not the front runner to take on that permanent role. As you say, there have been some positive signs. Home form clearly is something that Pools need to improve. I think one of the issues that they've had since relegation back to the National League is they've struggled to string a run of wins together. I sometimes feel like this Pools squad lacks a little bit of belief. Simon Grayson said over the summer, didn't he, that he wanted to bring in almost an entire new squad because they weren't carrying some of the baggage of previous seasons that had weighed heavily on members of past squads. But I wonder if it's almost just a feeling at Hartlepool United, the club and the squad are under so much pressure to succeed, but sometimes the foundations are not always in place. So it doesn't matter whether you've got a new group of players or an old group of players. The fans still feel that, and it can be difficult at times to play at Victoria Park because there is a lot of pressure and expectation from the home fans. And I think rightly so, there's a lot of dissatisfaction as well. I think Nicky Featherstone's been helped by having a favourable run of fixtures. He's probably come in at a good time. Obviously, they played Sutton, who I think were second from bottom at the time. Morecambe as well, who have had well-documented off-field issues over the summer, pushed to really to the brink. We spoke about that, I think, previously, but by former owner Jason Whittingham. I think a lot of people expected them to go to the wall. So inevitably, it's taken some time for them to settle. That was probably a game that Pools needed to win, wasn't it? And I think a 1-1 draw, especially having started the game so well and gone ahead, represented a really disappointing result in the end. But Saturday's game against Halifax, I was there. I was impressed. Look, it wasn't a perfect performance. I think a lot of Halifax fans might have felt that it was a bit of a smash and grab. George Evans, who's been really impressive since signing on loan from Millwall, obviously saved a penalty, and had that gone in, it could have been a different game. I think certainly the home fans would have felt like that. Halifax controlled plenty of the ball, but I think Pools will feel as though they controlled the game out of possession. They were happy to sit in a 4-5-1. Adam Campbell and Matty Danley, who played a sort of narrow forwards, did a really good job actually stretching out wide and tracking Halifax's marauding fullbacks. That was clearly something that Pools had worked on prior. And in a sense, I felt Pools were good value for the 3 points. It was a battling, gritty, determined performance, something that we probably haven't seen as much as we might have liked over the last couple of seasons. And that really is what Hartlepool United should be about. Yes, to succeed at this level, we know that you need quality. We know that you need firepower in the final third. That's obviously been a topic of contention so far this season as well. But I think you also need to have a fundamental set of principles. And to succeed at Hartlepool United and the North East specifically, where the footballing culture is so unique. The fans are probably the best in the country, but they're also among the most demanding in the country as well. You need to play with blood and thunder. I don't think fans will accept, any sort of other approach. And in someone like Featherstone, you do have a man who, although he doesn't have any managerial experience other than the last few weeks in the dugout, you do have someone who understands what it means to represent the team of Hartlepool United and the town of Hartlepool as well, better than pretty much anyone. Obviously, more than a decade at Victoria Park, the club's third highest appearance maker of all time as well. And I think that shone through on Saturday because it was a gritty, determined performance, perhaps in Featherstone's own image. And I think it's really important now that they start to build on it. They've got a number of winnable home games between now and the new year. I think Pools need to really start to build up some momentum, because if you look at the league table, yes, Pools are only 3 points outside the playoff places, but at the moment, it's only really seventh place that looks to be catchable. Obviously, there's a lot of football to be played and a long way in this season to go. And if Pools could string a run of 3 or 4 wins together, then they could really propel themselves into promotion contention. And we know how important momentum is at Victoria Park, perhaps more than any other ground in the National League, because it can be a fantastic place to play as well when things are going well. Wealdstone are a side in form. They've done really well under Sam Cox. I expected them to struggle, I have to say, but nonetheless, they're a part-time team. It's a long journey up from the south for them on Saturday. It's a game that Pools will be expecting to win, I think.
Absolutely. And I think with regards to Wealdstone, you've just mentioned that I don't think anyone had them as high as they currently are in the table in 8th. I don't think, people may not have said, well, look, they're definitely going to go down, but I don't think anyone had them for a playoff run either. As you said, decent form, but given that it's at home, you've got to feel that Pools are in a decent position to be able to go on and win that game. Even though it's fair to say that we don't score as freely as other teams. We don't concede many either. I think only Rochdale have a better goal conceding record than we do. I think 14 is the joint second least in the division. So, fingers crossed it does go well. I can't see too many goals again. I don't know if you agree, because it doesn't seem as though our goals are particularly free-flowing at either end this season, which is good from a defensive point of view, but certainly from an attacking point of view, it bears improvement. As I spoke to Danny about earlier on as well, I think Pools have always worked with the front two. If we play with one up front, isolated, on their own, flicking on to nobody, if you like, it very rarely seems to bear fruit, whereas if you play someone up front with the likes of Reid, say for example Reid and Campbell were to play up front, which may well work, given one can hold up and win balls in the air, and the other one is pacey, can get in behind the defence. Do you think potentially, if Nicky Featherstone can look at a front two, it may well bear fruit?
Well, I think particularly at home, Jack, obviously a lack of goals has been a big issue. Well documented. Manny Disruing left over the summer. He's had a fantastic start to life at Rochdale. And also Joe Gray, who, although he had his critics in his final season at Pools, was someone who could do that sort of second striker role. He played on the shoulder, he ran into the channels, and he always occupied defenders. And I think what Gray did really well, while he wasn't the most prolific, 13 goals a couple of seasons ago, did really well under Kevin Phillips towards the end of that campaign. Only 6 last season. Of course, he had a spell on the sidelines as well with an injury that required surgery in January, but he would create space for the attackers. The big concern for me, I'm not absolutely set on having to play 2 up front. I think you could play Campbell or Daly as a natural 10, and that would still be fine. But the issue is, and you mentioned it, Jack, is the isolation of the number 9. Even on Saturday at Halifax, when Pools obviously picked up a really good 3 points, at times there was no one within 15 yards of Alex Reid. He's almost in the team to do a defensive job, because he's trying to win fouls, get Pools up the pitch, and also he's really valuable at defensive set pieces as well. I'm pretty sure that Alex Reid will score goals. He's proven that he can score goals. He did really well for Wealdstone last season, didn't he? Got more than 20 goals in all competitions. I think 17 in the National League, something like that. He's proven that he can score goals at this level, in a side struggling to a greater extent than Pools. So I think if you can get him in the positions where he wants to be, then there's every chance that he will still go on to score 15, maybe even more than 15 goals so far at the end of this season. Sorry, I think the two issues that Pools have really had is the setup, particularly under Simon Grayson. He's obviously a coach who has built his reputation on solid defensive foundations. He's a self-styled pragmatist. Pools were superb defensively at the start of the season. Obviously, kept 4 clean sheets in the opening 4 games. Harvey Cartwright was fantastic in goal. They had a settled back line. They had those 3 centre halves, really difficult to break down, but they didn't really have much attacking threat whatsoever. I think the setup under Nicky Featherstone has improved somewhat. I'm still concerned about getting someone closer to Alex Reid, but I also think it's a mentality thing. I think this poolside and poolsides gone by have lacked a bit of killer instinct at times. Hartlepool United ostensibly are one of the biggest clubs in the National League. It very rarely feels like the players genuinely believe that. We talk about a game like Wealdstone. The Pools really ought to be winning. 10 or 15 years ago, it would have been unimaginable having a conversation thinking about Pools struggling to beat a side like Wealdstone. It's a game that they certainly should expect to win. I think there is scope to get another attacking player on the pitch. Nicky Featherstone played 3 central midfielders against Halifax: Jack Hunter, Nathan Sharon, and Jamie Manley, albeit Jamie Manley played in a slightly more advanced role. He's clearly not a natural 10. Featherstone will, of course, have to adapt. They're going to miss Jermaine Francis again this weekend. He's off on international duty. I know that's a real boon for him, but it's a big miss for Pools. Luke Charman has had a nagging injury as well, and he's been excellent this season, albeit he can still lack quality in the final third. So I think Pools need natural width. They're probably still short of one winger, because when you don't have Francis and Charman at your disposal, you don't have a whole host of options. Obviously, young Kean Foreman has just come into the fray as well. I'd like to see Jamie Manley in the team from an attacking sense, because I think he's the one central midfielder who's really capable of picking up an attacking pass that can split defenses. He's probably the most purposeful and proactive. I think at home, certainly you could get away with playing Manley in a slightly deeper role alongside either Sharon or Hunter. You'd imagine, given his reliability, it would be Sharon, and that would allow you to get an extra attacker on the pitch. You could play a Campbell or a Daly as a 10, and you could potentially play another striker as well. They do have some options. I still don't think they're blessed with options, but I think mentality and setup are both significant. Yes, I think there's scope to get another attacker on the pitch, but I think the crucial thing for me is to get bodies closer to Alex Reid, whether that comes from a midfield runner or whether that comes from giving your attacking players a little bit more freedom to advance up the pitch. Those are going to be really significant, particularly, as you say, at home. Away from home, Pools can almost afford to sit back and invite pressure on. That absolutely can't happen at Victoria Park. The fans simply won't stand for it. And that's one of the real challenges Nicky Featherstone's going to have to navigate.
Moving back to the game at Halifax, just a quick one as well. It's the second season in a row that we went to Halifax and won by a single goal to nil. And again, another very good defensive performance, as we've already said. But just to point out one man who seems to have flourished since Nicky Featherstone came in an interim basis, and it's a man who hasn't really flourished at all since he arrived for his second spell at the club, in Adam Campbell. He's got 2 goals in 2 games, and he seems to have found a little bit of confidence under Nicky Featherstone. I think personally it's fair to say that he's probably been the standout player in Nicky Featherstone's short tenure, as it is at the moment. I think against Gainsborough, I know we said we weren't talking about it, against Gainsborough, I think he was probably the only person on the pitch who, whilst he didn't affect the game in the way we would have liked, I think he's the only person potentially who could have come out with it with a little bit of credit, because he did put himself about. And I think since then he's gotten better and better in his role, and the 2 goals that he scored tells you where his head's at currently.
Yeah, I'm really delighted for Adam Campbell, Jack. He obviously has had a really torrid time at Pools for all sorts of reasons. I think the impact of confidence, although it's something that we talk about all the time, it is often underrated. I spoke to Adam Campbell. He was behind me in the press box against when Pools played Carlisle at the beginning of October. He'd obviously been omitted from the squad altogether. I think at the time he'd only played 1, maybe 2 substitute appearances, was really on the fringe of things against under Simon Grayson. Sorry, but I could tell how much it meant to him. I could tell how much he was determined to get back into things. He's desperate to succeed. He obviously arrived with a really big reputation. I think that added an element of pressure in and of itself. He was a regular in the Crawley side that won promotion to League One, a really unlikely promotion as well. I think they started the season in League Two as one of the favourites for relegation. Went and won the playoffs. Campbell started in the final at Wembley. I think played almost 40 games for them that season. Was offered a new contract as well to remain in West Sussex. Wanted to come back to the Northeast. As you said, he played a couple of games on loan at Pools at the very beginning of his career. Came through at Newcastle, made his debut there while a teenager. Was obviously a smash hit at Gateshead as well, really integral part of the side that won the National League North title there. Fans understandably expected big things of him. I think one of the issues he had under Darren Sarll, which is an issue that a lot of players had, is that Sarll's very direct brand of football, shall we say, was plainly ill-suited to get the best out of him. He's a diminutive player who relies really on his technical prowess. And I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why he's been able to thrive under Nicky Featherstone. I know as a player, Featherstone hasn't always been everyone's cup of tea, but he's another player who's built his game on his technical ability. I think you need to play to Campbell's strengths. That's often the case if you're going to play with a number 10, although I think Campbell also does a lot of good work out of possession. That was probably the one positive thing you could have said about him last season, other than one or two flashes of promise under Lenny Lawrence as well. But it's really important that you play to his strengths. He's been given a little bit more freedom, I think, out of possession to go and get the ball, to go and make things happen. But to be honest, Jack, although I've always been really rooting for him because I think he's a great guy. We've had the chance to interview him a few times. I'm a big fan of his as a person. I think he's got the right attitude. I wasn't sure that he was ever going to be able to turn it round. Towards the end of last season and beginning of this, it felt so low, didn't it? I wouldn't have been surprised at all if he went out on loan in the opening weeks of the campaign after Simon Grayson didn't really seem to fancy him. Either had a really torrid end to the season as well. I know was on the wrong end of a lot of stick from sections of supporters as well, who were understandably frustrated because he arrived with a big reputation and really failed to deliver on that. But I couldn't believe the player that I was watching on Saturday in particular against Halifax, because not just his goal, not just his work out of possession, which is something that's never faltered. He's always worked really hard for the team, but the way he was making things happen, the way he was showing for the ball, wanting the ball, and when he got the ball, looking to play that incisive forward pass. So much of what Pools did well went through him, and that's obviously something that he deserves huge credit for. I think his mentality, his attitude has been really impressive. Look, he wouldn't have had the career that he's had if he wasn't a capable footballer, but he's shown that he's a really strong character, a really courageous individual. Nicky Featherstone, of course, deserves credit. I think it was not without risk putting him back into the side. Campbell has repaid that faith pretty handsomely so far, and he could perhaps be a big player for Pools the remainder of the season. I think one thing that they've often been lacking, obviously in Anthony Mancini, they had that sort of flair player number 10, but he was never really available, well, not nearly as much as Pools fans or any of the various coaches and managers would have liked. Campbell's pretty reliable physically. He might not have the creative spark that someone like Mancini does, but what he is able to do is provide that link between the midfield and attack. We've often said, we've spoken already today about the fact that Alex Reid, or whoever it might be leading the line, is far too isolated far too much of the time. In Campbell, whether you play him as an attacking midfielder or whether you play him as a second striker, he perhaps is capable of providing that link. Really delighted for him, and it could be really interesting for Pools. It's a terrible cliche, isn't it? But he has the potential to be like a new signing.
Absolutely. I think if he can continue this form, there's no reason why he shouldn't be anywhere other than the starting 11. I think it does set a good precedent as well at any club, where if a player comes back from, well, he was out in the cold virtually. He wasn't even on the bench for a lot of Simon Grayson's tenure at the club. And I think it does set a good precedent that he has played himself into form. He's played himself into the starting 11. And as long as he maintains that form, there's no reason why he can't stay there. And it does set something for the rest of the squad to follow if that's the case, because if they manage to up their performance levels, I think the one person to look at in this instance is probably Danny Johnson, because he hasn't yet scored in a competitive game for Pools. And at the moment, he's sort of more on the bench as Alex Reid and Verdane Oliver have both come in and started over him. If he manages to play himself into form, there's no reason why he can't do what Campbell has done and gotten back into the side. And if that's the case, then brilliant, because it can only benefit the club and the squad if that does happen. Looking at the defensive side just a little bit before we move on as well, there was a very strange moment probably, I think, in the Gainsborough game where Jack Hunter and I think Brad Walker were playing at centre back together, which I think shows you how much injuries have impacted the defensive unit since the start of the season, where we had such a good record at the time with that back three of McNally, Coogan, and Cameron John. And I think with the return of Coogan and John to the side, it looks as though, even though we're not back to the full complement of the three, it looks as though that back two does seem to have given us a little bit of solidity in the defence. And with the addition of Tom Parks, who isn't what he once was, he may not accept that now, but he is getting on a little bit. So I think he'll have to accept it eventually that his body will break down. But that's that sort of unit that we've got now, with the injuries having gone away for the time being anyway. If we can keep those fit, when McNally gets back, I believe in December, if we can keep those three fit in that centre of defence, we will be rock solid once again. And it can't be underestimated how good that is.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that's obviously a massive boost. I think Pool's recruited really well defensively over the summer. Perhaps there are still one or two question marks over the fullbacks who started really, really well, but haven't impressed me much in recent weeks, I have to say. Bez Topolage obviously didn't start on Saturday, but came on and made the goal, did really well to show the presence of mind to find Adam Campbell. I thought Jay Ben actually had a good game on Saturday as well, particularly defensively, but still needs to do more in terms of his end product. But at the same time, it's probably unfair to rely on your fullbacks to go and create too many goals and assists. You need your forward players to do that. First and foremost, look, Pools have been unlucky with injuries, but sometimes I get a bit tired of hearing that, because every side has injuries. Every side has to cope with injuries. I think a failure to be able to absorb those injuries has been a real problem for Pools for a number of years. They often have a strong starting 11, a strong first 12 or 13, but they just don't have the strength and depth to cope. Inevitably, you have to cut your cloth accordingly. I think Pools clearly did increase their transfer budget over the summer, but they were still probably one or two short at the same time. I think they clearly can't have foreseen that they were going to have so many injuries in defensive areas all in quick succession, because they looked pretty well stocked at the beginning of the campaign. It has to be said. It does sometimes feel like there's always an excuse for why things are not going well at Hartlepool United. I find that a bit frustrating at times, but certainly they've got some really capable defenders. Max Coogan has done really well, really grown into that role as well. And Cameron John, it has been a revelation, actually. He sort of went under the radar a little bit, his signing over the summer. I think perhaps because it coincided with Joe Gray's departure. Gray obviously went the other way to York, albeit in an unrelated deal. John is obviously really versatile, really reliable. Pools missed him as well, didn't they, when he wasn't able to play against York, and then when he was cup tied for those two FA Cup matches as well. His absence was really keenly felt. I love watching him play because he's a defender who always looks like he's one step ahead of the game. He's not the biggest physically, he's not the most imposing, but he reads the game so well, and he's so unflappable as well. He never looks like he's going to panic. Even when Pools are on the back foot, he never really appears flustered. I think moving forward in a bid to get more out of their attacking players, certainly while Nicky Featherstone remains in post, I think Pools will play a back four moving forward. So obviously having John and Coogan. Tom Parks I thought was outstanding actually on Saturday against Halifax. He does thrive in a certain type of situation. I think if you can get a more mobile forward to run at him and drag him into the channels, then certainly he can be exposed. But I think in terms of defending his box, he's still one of the best in the National League. Physically, there are obviously question marks over him. I think only played 11 or only featured in 11 of his side's 20 games so far this season. Has had a number of injuries, was taken off after 65 minutes in West Yorkshire as well. Not quite sure the extent of that just yet. Reece McNally had a fantastic start to the season as well, was probably the outstanding Pools centre-half. So a massive blow to lose him. Whoever's in charge will obviously be hoping to have him back, if not late December, then certainly into the new year. Pools have done really well, I think, defensively. The recruitment is often questioned, and I think understandably, by sections of the fan base. But defensively, they've done extremely well. And I think you have to give credit to what they've done in the goalkeeping department as well. Left it late to sign Harvey Cartwright, but got their man in the end. I think they were actually interested in Cartwright a couple of years ago as well. And then, of course, we're really unfortunate to lose him after such an impressive start. 7 clean sheets in his opening 13 appearances. When he trudged off against Carlisle, and then when Pools fans were given the news that he was going to go back to Hull after it was found out that he'd had a serious injury. I think a lot of supporters would have understandably been fearing the worst, but huge credit to Pools, who sort of had to rush through a deal for George Evans. I think he only trained once or twice prior to his debut against York, was man of the match on that day, and has been similarly outstanding. It's testament to how good Evans has been. The Pools have hardly really felt the absence of Cartwright, who was perhaps the outstanding performer in the opening couple of months of the campaign. Evans did really well again on Saturday, saved the penalty, made another really important save from Will Harris in the opening exchanges too. And similar to Cartwright, for a young goalkeeper, has got real confidence, real courage of his convictions. I love the way he commands his area, a couple of really good catches, a couple of good punches as well. There are loads of good shot stoppers up and down the football pyramid. I think what makes a really outstanding goalkeeper is that ability to command the area, to come and take the pressure off your defence, to be able to deal with crosses. And I think Cartwright and Evans have both proven that they've got that ability. And that suggests to me that they're both going to go on and have really, really good careers.
Absolutely, and I think if our recruitment was as good further forward as it was in defence, and particularly with the goalkeeping positions this season, we'd be absolutely fine in this division. I think for a number of years we've had success in the goalkeeping department with the goalkeepers that we've signed. If we ignore that strange period, shall we say, where we had Aaron Lee Barrett and Jan Butts as our two goalkeeping options, going further back towards our promotion years under Mike Newell, we had Anthony Williams in goal at that point. Then you had Jim Provitt, Dimi Konstantopoulos. After that, we won't go into Barrett and Butts again. But after that, we had Trevor Carson, who was easily one of the best in League Two at that point. We had Scott Loach in the National League, who was excellent for the level as well. We've had Ben Killip, who had his detractors, but at the end of the day, he was probably a solid option. He wasn't the best in the league, but he was a good option for that level. And then we've come across Harvey Cartwright and George Evans within the space of 2 months. And quite frankly, the level of that scouting over the years has been immense, because there's not, other than that little period with the two goalkeepers I mentioned, our goalkeeping department's been pretty much spot on.
Yeah, I think that they've done well in general. I think obviously there was a bit of an issue at the beginning of last season as well. Dixon and Jameson,
True.
who were both actually signed as number ones, and I think in fairness, a lot of people a couple of seasons ago, sorry, a lot of people expected them to both be really good signings. Look, sometimes it just doesn't turn out like that. I think the recruitment this summer has, in some areas, left something to be desired, perhaps, but I think is probably unfairly criticised at times. I still think Alex Reid is likely to come good. I think Jermaine Francis is a really good signing. Matty Danley's shown one or two positive signs. Still think he needs to be a bit more. Brad Walker hasn't really hit the ground running. Danny Johnson is someone you mentioned as well. I think will score goals, but you have to play a certain way if you're going to get the best out of him. He is someone I think who needs to play alongside a strike partner. Certainly isn't suited to playing that lone number 9, and you need to get him in the box in positions to score goals. Otherwise, he's not the most dynamic of forwards. Don't think he's necessarily going to offer you that much. But Pools have tended to do really well in the goalkeeping department. That's why it almost makes it such a shock, such an unusual departure when they have rare moments of struggle. And as you say, in Cartwright and Evans, they look like they've unearthed a couple of real gems. To be such a young goalkeeper and to have such an impressive start to life at Victoria Park for both of them, it is real credit to their technical ability, but also their mentality as well. So that's been a real boon for Pools so far this season.
We've spoken about Wealdstone already, but just in terms of how you think potentially that'll go on, if we look at the next 2 games after that as well to take us to the end of November, we've got Eastleigh away next Saturday and Truro and the return of John Askey on the 29th as it stands. So in terms of how you think those 3 games will go, do you reckon there's a positive outcome for Pools?
Well, I think Pools will be wanting to take 7 points probably from those 3 games. Both Wealdstone and Truro are going to have to do a lot of travelling. We knew it's going to be challenging for Truro in particular, coming all the way up from Cornwall. I think other than Gateshead, Hartlepool is their longest trip of the season, and a difficult time of the year perhaps for them to be making that trip as well. Dark and relatively bleak as well. So I think Pools will fancy that they're going to win those 2 home games. Look, we often sit here and say Pools need to win their home games. They should be beating these sort of sides at this sort of level. Doesn't always happen like that. We know very well from bitter experience you have no divine right to beat any team at this level. In the National League, as we've already touched on, is an enormously competitive division. I'm a huge admirer of Sam Cox and the job he's done at Wealdstone. I think he was unfortunate not to get the job a couple of years ago. He's come in over the summer with a really threadbare squad. I imagine one of the division's smallest budgets. They're certainly not a team full of superstars, but they are a team. They're all pulling in the same direction. He's done a remarkable job there. Look, I'd be amazed if they finished the season in eighth, but I think anywhere in the sort of bottom lower mid table, something like that would still represent an enormous success. I think if you'd said to them at the beginning of the campaign, you'll be fifth from bottom, they probably would have taken that. So huge credit to them. Nonetheless, it's a game that I think Pools will fancy themselves to win. Eastleigh's always a bit more difficult just because of the nature of the travel. It's only 15 minutes from my mum and dad's house, so I don't mind quite so much. But for all the Pools fans making the trip, and of course the players and staff, it is a really long old hike. I think Scott Bartlett's an interesting appointment. Obviously, they sacked Kelvin Davis earlier on this season. I think they actually recruited pretty well over the summer, but then they lost Tyree Shade right on the eve of the new season. That was a big blow. He scored against Pools last season and was probably their talisman. I think given the nature of that game, you tend to take a point. You go all the way from the northeast to Hampshire. I think a point's always a good result there, no matter what sort of Eastleigh side you're playing. But if Pools can get 7 points, it's going to be really interesting because you would then imagine they'd be right into that playoff mix. And of course, Nicky Featherstone, who remains in interim charge for now, it would be perhaps difficult not to give him the job if he can continue to maintain this unbeaten run and get Pools propelling themselves up the table. I think that would really state his case for the job on a permanent basis.
Absolutely. There's no reason to change while he's winning at the moment. I think if there's no better options out there, then there is no reason why he can't take on the job full time if he's getting the results to back that up. And as you mentioned, we don't have the best record at Eastleigh. So a point there, as long as we win our home games, because that is something that we've also mentioned before. I think I mentioned it with Danny yesterday as well, that winning our home games takes the pressure off the away games. But if we don't win the home games that we should be winning, it then puts pressure on the away games to then take the 3 points, where a draw probably would have been a good result. For example, not beating Morecambe last week was a blow because that then put more pressure on the game at Halifax to get the 3 points there. Whereas if we'd reversed those two results and beaten Morecambe and drawn at Halifax, we'd have probably said that was a decent return of 4 points from 6. So it's very similar in that aspect. If we beat Wealdstone this Saturday, then we can go to Eastleigh with the mindset that a point is a good result. Truro haven't yet got a point away from home, let alone a victory. So realistically, we should be winning that game if we have any aspirations towards the top 7. And then after that, it's also a game at home against Yeovil. So 3 of our next 4 are at home. I think, what does that come to? 10 out of 12? 10 points out of 12, probably? 3 wins and a draw?
Yeah, you would like to think so. 3 of the next 4 games at home, Jack. I'll be putting my feet up as well. Lovely stuff.
I bet you will, back down south for a bit. And then obviously it is the FA Trophy weekend. So we still have to wait and see if, we're definitely there. We can't get knocked out before, even for Pools standards, we can't get knocked out of a competition before we've been in it. But we'll have to see if we're home or away, because if we're at home there, you might as well, go back down to your parents for a bit and put your feet up for a bit. Thank you very much for your time. And hopefully the situation does get resolved at some point. You're back into the ground to provide the coverage that you and the Mail both provide for the fans of the club. And I mean, you won't be at Saturday, but you've already said that Eastleigh's only 15 minutes away from your parents' house. So if there was ever a nice little natural hotel for you to lay over for, I think, is it about 5.5 hours, if I remember rightly? 5 hours,
Yeah.
5.5.
Yeah.
So it's it's good to have somewhere to rest up and get back home, as it were. But yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see what the season holds, and fingers crossed everything works out in the end for both yourself and the club. Thank you very much, Robbie.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me on.